TrueStory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
TrueStory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. A steady drizzle had turned the sleepy town of Chesterfield, Ohio, into a patchwork of twinkling streetlights reflected on wet pavement as dawn crept over the horizon. In the heart of this Midwest community stood the Carter family's Victorian home on Maple Avenue, its white-trimmed bay windows glowing softly against the gray morning sky. Inside, a worn welcome mat lay damp, and a row of rain boots clustered by the front door hinted at early spring showers. By 6:15 a.m., Rachel Carter was already awake, lying beneath a quilt patterned with hydrangeas and gazing at the delicate plaster ceiling medallion overhead. She lingered in that quiet half-light, savoring the fleeting warmth of her blankets before slipping one foot out to the plush carpet. Today, like most weekdays, she would follow a familiar routine. Bathe Lucy, her bright-eyed 2-year-old, prepare a quick breakfast, and then present herself to her professional life as an editor at the Daily Chronicle. Rachel had rebuilt her life, brick by brick, since her divorce 2 years ago. She had forged a career she loved, welcomed Lucy into the world, and discovered a kindness in Ethan, her husband of 9 months, that felt like home. Yet beneath Rachel's composed exterior lay a growing tension that each dripping raindrop seemed to echo. For 6 weeks, Ethan's mother, Sharon Hayes, recently widowed and newly relocated from Michigan, had been living under their roof. Sharon, a retired high school principal's wife with crisp silver hair and precise manners, woke each morning at 5:30 a.m. to inspect every inch of the house. She hovered over the marble countertops with a lint brush, sniffed at leftovers in the refrigerator, and rearranged Rachel's neatly stacked cookbooks by height and color. To Sharon, these rituals were simply good housekeeping. To Rachel, they felt like judging glares, as though her worth and even her marriage could be measured in dust-free surfaces and perfectly aligned silverware. Downstairs, Ethan moved with quiet determination. A software engineer by day and a doting husband by choice, he measured beans for the espresso machine, humming a favorite jazz tune off-key. He had insisted on this morning ritual months ago. 2 lattes, each garnished with a light cocoa dust, ready to warm them through the chill. When Rachel emerged in her navy cardigan and ankle boots, he greeted her with a gentle smile and the unspoken question, "How are you holding up?" She accepted the latte, savoring the rich steam, and answered him with her lips rather than words. This Victorian house, once a symbol of fresh beginnings, was becoming a battlefield of unspoken rules. Rachel's second-floor home office overlooked a patch of daffodils just beginning to bloom. She often paused by the window, cradling her fleece-lined coffee mug, watching rain fall in soft rivulets down the glass. She remembered Ethan's bright encouragement just last month. "You're amazing at what you do. Don't let anyone rattle your confidence." Yet with her editor's red pen in one hand and uncertainty in the other, Rachel wondered if any reassurance could shield her from her mother-in-law's relentless oversight. That morning, as Rachel descended the staircase, she steeled herself against another round of scrutiny. In the foyer, a cluster of mud-splattered sneakers told of Lucy's latest adventure in the rain. Rachel scooped up her daughter, smoothing damp curls away from her forehead, and carried her into the kitchen, where Sharon stood examining a recipe in an antique cookbook. The scent of lemon zest lingered in the air from Sharon's weekend experiment. "Rachel," Sharon said without looking up, voice calm but firm, "I noticed the coffee table could use dusting. I'll expect that before dinner." Rachel's heart tightened. She forced a polite smile. "Of course, Mom." Ethan materialized beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. He caught Sharon's eye and offered a gentle nod, hoping to defuse the moment. Rachel took her latte, felt its warmth seep into her fingers, and murmured, "Thank you." In that moment, The rising tension between her and Sharon crackled like the storm lingering beyond the windows. Behind them, a framed photograph captured the earlier days. Rachel and Ethan laughing under a willow tree at their small wedding, Lucy nestled between them. The photo held promise of joy and new beginnings. Yet the real test loomed. Would this home once again become a sanctuary for Rachel, or would the shadows cast by a critical mother-in-law eclipse the happiness she'd fought so hard to build? A sudden knock at the door signaled the arrival of Emily Parker, the 22-year-old house assistant Sharon had hired last week. Rachel braced herself. Emily's friendly smile masked sharp eyes that seemed to glean everything she could for Sharon's next critique. The day ahead promised to challenge Rachel's calm resolve, push Ethan's loyalty, and, if she dared, reveal how much she was willing to fight for her own family's peace. The rain continued its steady song on the roof, a soothing reminder that, just as storms pass, so too could the tension within these walls, if Rachel found the strength to stand her ground. As the front door clicked shut behind Emily Parker, the 22-year-old assistant Sharon had hired, an uneasy hush settled over the kitchen. Emily swept inside with a bright smile, her canvas tote slung over one shoulder. She greeted Rachel with an enthusiastic, "Good morning, Miss Carter. I'm here to help with whatever you need today." Rachel forced a thin smile. "Thanks, Emily. I was just about to start breakfast for Lucy." She lifted her daughter so that Emily could ruffle the toddler's curls. Yet even this moment of domestic calm felt fragile. Rachel could almost hear her mother-in-law's silent critique waiting in the next breath. Sharon Hayes stood at the counter, arms crossed over a tailored blazer. Her sharp gaze assessed Emily's flourish as though judging a piece of art. Finally she spoke, voice cool. "Emily, please clear those cookbooks from the countertop. They should be arranged by height, tallest in back, shortest in front. And wipe down the cabinets. There's a fine film of dust gathering." Emily's smile flickered. "Of course, Mrs. Hayes." She moved to comply, opening a cabinet and pulling out a microfiber cloth as Sharon continued. Rachel set a small stack of pancakes on the table for Lucy. "Mom, I'm going to feed Lucy first. Maybe you and Emily can sort the cookbooks afterwards." Ethan hovered near the stove, monitoring bacon strips sizzling in their cast-iron skillet. Sharon turned to Rachel with an arch of her brow. "Sorting cookbooks is part of the kitchen's upkeep. I've noticed the list of chores isn't clear. We'll need a schedule. What gets done when, by whom. Emily will handle dusting and cabinets. You can focus on meal prep. Ethan, you can..." She paused, as if searching for another task that would suit her son. His jaw tightened. Ethan set down his spatula. "Mom, she's got breakfast covered. And I'll take the trash out. Rachel and I split chores in a way that works." Sharon's lips curved into a polite but stony smile. "I'm only suggesting ways to keep this house at its best. It deserves excellence." Rachel's pulse quickened. She'd grown accustomed to biting back reactions, snaps that Sharon would only record in her mental ledger, but today she felt a surge of frustration. She pressed a hand over Lucy's tiny one as the toddler reached for a pancake. Softly, Rachel said, "Let's eat, Lucy." She lowered her voice. "Thank you, Ethan. I appreciate it." Ethan gave her a reassuring nod. As Emily began dusting the cookbooks, Rachel carried Lucy to a high chair, buckled her in, and placed a plate of pancakes within reach. The child clapped in delight, momentarily drawing everyone's attention. But Sharon merely watched, expression cool. When Lucy started spilling maple syrup onto the table, Sharon leaned forward. "Rachel, please remember to have a stack of napkins ready. Sticky tables attract ants." Rachel's cheek twitched. "I'll keep some napkins here tomorrow, Mom." She watched Lucy, who now smeared syrup across her bib and giggled. Rachel swallowed hard, clenching her free hand into a fist. Ethan stepped close. Softly, he said, "Hey, are you okay?" Rachel managed a small nod. She continued feeding Lucy, each spoonful a lifeline anchoring her to normalcy against the rising tide of scrutiny. After breakfast, Rachel cleared the table. Emily wiped down the high-chair tray, and Sharon inspected the edges. "It still looks sticky," she remarked, Someone should use cleaner. Emily hesitated, then asked quietly, "Should I fetch the cleaning spray, Mrs. Hayes?" Sharon nodded.
Yes.
"And disinfect the handles on all cabinets as well." Rachel caught Emily's eye. Her expression mixed sympathy and apprehension. Upstairs, Rachel retreated to her home office under the guise of catching up on work emails. But her heart pounded too hard for concentration. She toggled between her draft article and Sharon's laundry list of critiques, each bullet point a reminder that this house, her home, no longer felt like a refuge. Ethan found her there 10 minutes later, slipping a mug of green tea onto her desk. "You're in there all morning," he said. "Can I help?" Rachel lifted her tired eyes. "It's just," she trailed off, then exhaled. "I'm tired of being judged for every little thing." Ethan sat on the edge of her desk. "I know, and I hate that she's doing this. But she's insecure after losing Dad. She sees you as different." Rachel glanced at the framed wedding photo beside her monitor, her and Ethan beaming under a willow tree, Lucy nestled between them. "Different how?" she asked softly. "She's worried I'll abandon her next," Ethan said. "She thinks, because you were married before, you're not stable." Rachel pressed her lips together. "I'm not going anywhere." Ethan reached for her hand. "I know, and I've told her that. But the more she tries to control things, the more it drives a wedge between you." Rachel exhaled, tension in her shoulders. "So what? We just give in?" Ethan shook his head.
No.
"But we need to set boundaries. I'll talk to her again. I promise." Taking a small sip of tea, Rachel let the warmth settle her nerves. "Thank you," she whispered. That afternoon, Sharon called a brief meeting in the living room. She unfolded a printed chore chart with margins meticulously annotated in red ink. "I've thought through the weekly tasks," she said, clicking a silver pen. "Mondays, vacuum living room. Tuesdays, wipe baseboards. Wednesdays, organize pantry. Fridays, prune the daffodils. Emily will be responsible for all dusting and Rachel." Rachel raised her hand gently. "Mom, I'm working full-time through the week." "I can't." Sharon cut her off with a cool tone. "That's all the more reason to delegate household tasks properly. This isn't just, and excuse me, Rachel, not having your own household to manage. You might not appreciate the value of daily routines." Rachel's cheeks warmed. "I do appreciate it, but I also need to plan deadlines, meetings." Ethan stood, voice calm but firm. "Mom, this is Rachel's home too. We manage our schedule together. If you have suggestions, that's fine, but we'll decide what works. Emily can help with chores, but Rachel and I will split the rest." Sharon's jaw tightened, eyes narrowing. "I only want this house in top condition." Ethan replied, "We get that. We'll take care of it. But we need to find a balance. Rachel's job is important too." A long silence followed. Sharon closed the chore chart slowly, folding the edges with deliberate precision. "Very well," she said. "We'll see how that works." That evening, after Lucy's bedtime, Rachel and Ethan sat across from each other at the kitchen island, both holding mugs of chamomile tea. The chore chart lay on the counter, Sharon's red ink still visible. "You were amazing." Talking to her, Rachel said quietly, swirling tea. Ethan sighed.
"I'm worried."
"She's so set in her ways, and every concession just seems to embolden her." Rachel looked from the chart to the darkening window. "I know, but I don't want to feel like I'm failing at home and at work. Something's got to give." Ethan reached across, taking her hand. "I'll keep talking to her. We'll set clear limits. You don't deserve this stress." Rachel nodded, blinking back unshed tears. She took a deep breath. "I just want our home to feel like ours again." As the rain pattered on the roof and the lights of Chesterfield glowed through the mist, Rachel felt that the true test lay ahead. Sharon's scrutiny would not let up. Emily's eager mimicry would grow bolder, and Rachel would need every ounce of her patience and Ethan's unwavering support to reclaim the sanctuary she and Lucy deserved. In the hush of their kitchen, one promise stood clear. No matter how many chores were assigned, no matter how many critiques were delivered, Rachel would not surrender her home, or her peace of mind, without a fight. The next morning dawned gray and cool, the sidewalks sheened with overnight rain. Rachel lingered at the foot of the stairs longer than usual, dreading the arrival of Emily Parker, the young assistant Sharon had hired. In under a week, Emily's presence had already upset the delicate balance in the Carter household. At precisely 8 a.m., Emily glided in through the front door, her bright tote bag slung over one shoulder and a perky smile in place. She paused in the foyer, tying her long chestnut hair into a perfect ponytail. Spotless flats clicked on the hardwood as she set down her bag and addressed Rachel with a crisp, "Good morning, Miss Carter. I've made your grocery list for the week, and I thought we could tackle pantry organization first." Emily had quickly ingratiated herself with Sharon by noticing the slightest imperfection in the kitchen's layout, an offensive gap between two spice containers, a crooked cutting board on the counter. Within days, she'd earned Sharon's full trust, shadowing her every inspection, taking notes in a pink spiral notebook, and relaying every morsel of Sharon's critique to her in hushed asides. As Rachel fumbled to set down her coffee mug, Ethan entered through the garage door. "Morning, Em," he said warmly to Rachel, then forced a polite nod toward Emily. "Mr. Carter." Emily responded with a slight curtsy, then turned her gaze back to Rachel as though awaiting direction. Each gesture was rehearsed, every tilt of her head measured to perfection. Unsettled, Rachel replied, "Good morning, Emily. I actually need to finish an article draft. Maybe you can dust the living room first?" Emily's smile tightened. "Certainly. I'll do a thorough job." But she didn't retreat. Instead, she remained poised, as if ready for further instruction. From the moment Emily stepped into the Carter home, Rachel had sensed something unsettling beneath her sunny exterior, a subtle manipulation, a knowing glint in her eyes when parents gossiped. Last night, over dinner, Rachel overheard Emily leaning toward Sharon at the kitchen table, whispering, "I know exactly why he snapped at Rachel. He feels torn between us." Sharon, startled, had only raised an eyebrow, murmuring, "Really?" Rachel set down her fork and watched helplessly as Sharon's expression flickered. Was Emily planting seeds of discord between Rachel and Ethan?
Now.
Emily swept into the living room. She pulled a microfiber cloth from her tote and began lining up picture frames on the mantel in perfect order of height. Rachel clamped her jaw, balancing her laptop on her knee, unsure whether to intervene. That afternoon, Rachel returned home early to find Emily and Sharon seated across from each other at the kitchen island. Sharon murmured, "Emily, your insight is invaluable. I don't know how we managed before you arrived." Emily inclined her head graciously, placing her hand over Sharon's in a comforting gesture. Then, with impeccable timing, she asked, "How is Ms. Carter handling the extra workload? She seemed tense when I saw her this morning." Sharon's eyes flicked toward the door, as if savoring the drama. "She's adjusting, but perhaps more reminders of what needs doing would help." Before Rachel could speak, Sharon dismissed her, saying, "Emily and I are reviewing the chore list. Why don't you prepare Lucy's lunch?" That evening, as Rachel packed peanut butter sandwiches for Lucy, Emily hovered behind her. Quietly, she said, "You know, Sharon mentioned she worries you might not be giving Ethan enough attention. It must be hard balancing career and family." Rachel's heart thumped. Emily placed a gentle hand on her arm. "I'm only saying because she asked me to watch for signs. You two have such a beautiful family." Sharon emerged from the living room in a sweater that matched Emily's. "Yes, dear," she said. "It's all about maintaining harmony." Dinner that night tasted of uncertainty. Emily slid a green salad onto the table, complimenting Sharon's broiled salmon. She watched Rachel as though ready to record every quiver of her lip or downward glance. Over the next few days, Emily's scheming became more overt. She learned Ethan's work schedule and suggested to Sharon that they might host a mid-afternoon tea when he came home, an opportunity for mother and daughter-in-law to bond. Sharon embraced the idea, insistent that family tea would foster togetherness. One day, Ethan returned early. stepping into the kitchen to find Emily standing close behind Sharon as they arranged a tiered tray of scones. Rachel entered from the office doorway, coffee in hand. Ethan offered her a smile, but Rachel felt his tension ripple through the room. "Ethan, perfect timing," Emily cooed. "We've set up tea for you. Miss Carter, would you care to join?" Rachel stiffened. She'd been working on press proofs for an important story. She turned to Ethan. "I have a deadline." Before Ethan could reply, Sharon said, "Don't be rude, Rachel. Your husband deserves a proper welcome home." Rachel took a slow breath. "Of course." She slid into a chair, resolute not to let Emily's machinations rattle her facade. The three of them sipped ginger tea in awkward silence until Emily leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Ethan, Sharon told me you've been spending so much time covering galas for Rachel's magazine. She worries you'd rather be out than at home." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Galas are occasional. My priority is this family." Emily's lips curved. "I know, Mr. Carter. I only mention what she's told me." Sharon patted Emily's hand in approval, as though proud of her daughter-in-law's insight. Jason and Tyler's whispered texts arrived on Ethan's phone and Rachel's, alerting them to upcoming youth soccer tryouts. A small duo of reassurance in the storm. That night, Rachel confided to Ethan in hushed tones in their bedroom. "Emily's playing us both. She flatters Mom, soused out about us. I feel like I'm back under a microscope." Ethan ran his hand through his hair. "I've noticed. I've told Sharon to tone it down, but Emily backs her up every time." "I'm sorry, Em. I hate that she's making this so difficult." Rachel lay back on her pillow, tears threatening. "I can't keep pretending it's fine. Something has to give." Over the weekend, Rachel resolved to gather evidence of Emily's manipulation. She observed Emily's patterns, always present when Sharon complained, always ready with a whispered remark about Rachel's performance as wife and mother. She secretly set her phone to record the next time Emily insinuated something. Sunday afternoon, Rachel found her moment in the quiet hallway. Emily was dusting the living room shelves while Sharon rearranged antique trinkets. Rachel pressed record and approached, asking innocently, "Emily, mind if I ask how you and Mom are planning the week's tasks?" Emily turned, her expression bright but calculating. "I'm working with Mrs. Hayes to make sure everything runs smoothly."
You know, MS.
Carter, the balance between career and home can be tricky." She paused meaningfully. "I only mention it because she's concerned you might be overextending." Sharon glanced at Rachel with a satisfied nod. Rachel forced herself to smile and said, "Thanks for letting me know. I'll see what I can adjust." With that, Rachel slipped away, heart pounding, knowing she had captured Emily's sly tactics on her phone. That evening, Rachel played back the recording for Ethan, his jaw clenching as Emily's voice echoed. "Balance between career and home can be tricky." Ethan's green eyes flashed. "That's it. She's deliberately undermining you." He rose and squared his shoulders. "Tomorrow, I'm going to Sharon and Emily. No more games." Rachel nodded, relief mingling with trepidation. She realized the battle lines had been drawn, and Emily's cunning would only grow sharper. But armed with proof and Ethan's support, she felt ready to draw her own line in the sand. The next morning, Rachel and Ethan stood together at breakfast, ready to confront the architect of their household discord. As Emily breezed in, playlists softly humming from her phone, Ethan set down his coffee with quiet determination. Rachel braced herself, knowing that the deceptive calm before confrontation was the final turn of the tide. Emily nodded brightly, thrusting a clipboard toward Rachel. "Mom and I drafted an updated chore chart." Ethan cut her off, voice firm. "Emily, thanks, but this family works differently. Rachel and I manage our home together, and we've addressed the chore chart. We don't need adjustments from you." Emily blinked, surprise in her eyes. Sharon's expression flickered between astonishment and disapproval. Silence stretched. Rachel found her voice. "Emily, I value your help, but you've been reporting every misstep I make. I need you to stop stirring doubts between me and Ethan." Emily's bright facade cracked. "I'm just trying to help. Ethan shook his head. Not like this. If you still want to be part of this household, you'll respect our boundaries. That afternoon, Emily packed her tote in the foyer. Sharon appeared, pursing her lips, but didn't argue. Emily offered a stiff curtsy. Thank you for your service, Sharon said quietly. We'll let you know if we need further help. Emily nodded once, then slid out into the rain, leaving Rachel and Ethan alone in a silence that felt both tentative and hopeful. Rachel exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing. Thank you, she whispered to Ethan. He pulled her into a gentle embrace. You did it. Together. For the first time in weeks, their home felt like their own again, free of whispered manipulations and second-guessing glances. It was only the beginning of their fight, but Rachel knew she could face whatever came next, as long as Ethan stood by her side. The following morning, the Carter household buzzed with a tense undercurrent. Rain had given way to low-hanging clouds, casting the kitchen in a dim, silvery light. Emily Parker arrived at precisely 8 a.m., her tote bag slung confidently over one shoulder. She paused at the threshold, surveying the room with the same calculated smile that had unsettled Rachel so often. Good morning, Ms. Carter, Mr. Carter. Emily greeted, her tone syrupy. She stepped inside, placing her bag on the foyer bench. Today I thought we could finish the bedroom linen rotation and then tackle the baseboards in the hallway. Before Rachel could answer, Ethan appeared from the garage entry, keys still in hand. He offered Emily a polite nod, then turned to Rachel with a subtle raised eyebrow. It was an unspoken pact. Today they would end this. Actually, Emily, Ethan said, voice calm but firm, we've discussed the chore list. Rachel and I have it covered. Emily's smile faltered for the briefest moment. Of course, she said, lifting an eyebrow at Rachel. I only wanted to help. Rachel pressed her lips together. Her pulse raced. 2 weeks of whispered comments, planted doubts, and ever-shifting chores had led to this moment. She set her coffee mug down on the island, straightening her cardigan. Emily, she began, voice low and steady. We need to talk. Emily tilted her head, as though intrigued by the notion of a serious conversation. By all means, she replied. Rachel drew in a deep breath and held up her phone, screen facing Emily. I've recorded your comments for the past 2 days. You've told Mom that I'm neglecting Ethan, that I can't balance work and family. You've insinuated that I want to drive him away. Emily's eyes widened, just a fraction, but her composure snapped back. I'm only doing what Mrs. Hayes asked, she protested. Rachel's gaze hardened. No. You've been manipulating situations, planting seeds of doubt, so that Mom can wield more control. You hoped that by stirring conflict, you'd ingratiate yourself further, maybe even replace me. A ripple of tension flickered across Emily's face. That's ridiculous. Is it? Rachel leaned forward, voice rising. You follow us everywhere, report every little misstep. Feed Sharon gossip about me behind my back. How many times have I walked into the kitchen to find you whispering across the counter? Emily swallowed, blinking as the recorded snippets, Emily's own words, flashed at her mind. Sharon asked me to keep an eye on things. Rachel lifted a hand, palm outward. Stop using her as an excuse. This is on you. She turned to Ethan. You saw and heard it all. Ethan nodded, voice steady. Emily, this ends now. You're here to help with chores, not to undermine my wife or tear our marriage apart. Emily's mouth pressed into a thin line. She raised her chin defiantly. And what if I don't agree? Then we'll find someone who will. Rachel replied coolly. Sharon can handle the chores herself. We don't need your brand of help. The confrontation crackled through the air. Even Lucy, peering from her high chair, seemed to sense the shift. She clung to her sippy cup, eyes wide as adults snapped back and forth like storm-driven branches. For a moment, Emily looked as though she might argue. Then, her shoulders slumped. She lifted the tote from the bench, shoulders stiff. Fine, she said softly. I'll leave your family alone. Without another word, she turned on her heel and strode toward the front door. Rachel and Ethan exchanged a glance, relief mingled with lingering anger. Emily paused at the open door. She looked back once, vulnerability flickering in her eyes before she slipped into the rain and closed the door behind her. Inside, the house felt unnaturally still. Rachel sank into a chair by the island, breathing hard. Ethan crouched beside her, offering a hand. She grasped it. "We did it," he said quietly. Rachel pressed her head into his chest. "I didn't think I had it in me." Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You stood up for yourself. I'm proud of you." As the thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, Rachel realized that reclaiming her home required more than polite smiles and quiet endurance. It demanded courage, the willingness to confront deception head-on. That afternoon, the sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the freshly dusted living room and shining off the polished baseboards. Sharon, returning from her walk, paused at the threshold. She saw the house looked pristine, no chore charts, no whispers. She frowned, uncertain. Ethan greeted her with a gentle smile. "Mom, I hope you don't mind," he said. "Emily isn't with us anymore." Sharon's mouth tightened. "I see." She glanced at Rachel, who simply offered her a calm nod. For the first time, Sharon and Rachel stood as equals, sharing the same kitchen, the same concerns, and the same love for Ethan. Though Sharon's pride would not allow immediate admission of fault, a tentative truce hung in the air. And so, as the Carter home breathed a sigh of relief, Rachel recognized that this was only the battle's end, but not the war's. Harmony had been restored for now, but she and Ethan would need constant vigilance to guard against new threats. Today's victory belonged to them both. Tomorrow's challenges would be theirs to face together. A week of calm settled over the Carter household. The chore charts lay forgotten, Emily's absence restored a fragile harmony, and Sharon's critiques had softened to polite suggestions. Rachel and Ethan laughed together at breakfast again, and Lucy's giggles filled the living room. It felt like the storm had passed, until a cream-colored envelope appeared, tucked beneath the windshield wipers of Rachel's car that Thursday morning. No stamp, no return address, just her name scrawled in familiar handwriting. Later, in her office cubicle, Rachel slid the envelope open to reveal a single glossy photograph. Her chest tightened as she recognized the man stepping off a New York City airplane, his dark hair graying at the temples. Beneath the photo, in neat looping script, "Rachel, I'm here. Victor." Her breath caught. Victor Nolan, college sweetheart turned husband, then ex-husband, stood before her in that image. The same easy smile she'd once melted for. She had believed him gone from her life forever after their heated last conversation at the Justice of the Peace Chapel. He'd fled to Manhattan, forging a new career in finance. She'd rebuilt her life, a successful editorial career, a loving husband in Ethan, and a daughter whose bright laugh anchored her. Victor belonged to the past. Or so she'd thought. That evening, at the dinner table, Rachel slipped the photograph across the surface toward Ethan. Sharon sat beside him, mid-sip of Earl Grey, her expression unreadable. Ethan stared at the photo for a long moment before meeting Rachel's eyes. "He's back," she said softly. Ethan folded the photograph, his jaw tightening. "Are you okay seeing him?" Rachel swallowed. "I don't have a choice. He tracked me down." She traced Victor's silhouette on the glossy print. "I need to know why." The next afternoon, tucked beneath a slate sky, Rachel arrived at Sunrise Cafe in downtown Chesterfield. The bell chimed as she entered, and she found a corner table overlooking the street. Heart pounding, she fingered the photograph in her pocket. She told herself this was closure, nothing more. Moments later, Victor strode in, taller than she remembered, shoulders squared by a tailored charcoal coat. His eyes flicked across the cafe until they found her. His familiar smile softened at the sight of her. Rachel stood, pressing her lips into a thin line. "Victor." He hesitated, as if savoring her name, then approached. "Thank you for meeting me." His voice, gentler now, lined with remorse, echoed in her chest. Rachel nodded and sat. Between them lay a tension she hadn't felt in years. "I owe you an apology," Victor began after the waitress took their orders. "Leaving you without a word was unforgivable. I was miserable, and instead of talking, I ran." He paused, gaze dropping. "I never stopped regretting it." Rachel's fingers curled around her mug.
You moved on.
"Lived in New York, building a career." Victor's shoulders slumped. "Nothing felt right. Not without you." He swallowed. "I've even spent time abroad, London, Hong Kong, trying to find a part of my life that didn't ache for you." Memories flooded her. Late-night study sessions, rooftop conversations under string lights, his laughter ringing in her ear. Part of her ached at the confession. Another part seethed with anger at the years lost. "Why now?" she asked, voice steady despite her racing heart. Victor reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a single yellow daffodil, its stem wrapped in tissue. He placed it gently atop the photograph. "I realized I needed to face my mistakes before it was too late. Before you built a life that left no room for me." Rachel looked at the flower, at the man who once spoke words of forever beneath a spring sky. Tears prickled. "I'm married now. I have Lucy." She tapped her chest. "This is my family." He nodded, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I know. You deserve happiness. But I needed to tell you I'm sorry. And I wanted to hear from you, if you ever missed me." Her throat constricted. She wanted to slam her hand on the table and proclaim her devotion to her present, Ethan's unwavering love, Lucy's open-hearted trust. Yet a soft ache reminded her of their shared past. She carefully folded the photograph, sliding it toward him. "I do miss the person I was with you," she admitted. "But my life is here." Victor studied her, absorbing each word like a benediction. He rose, sliding the folded photo back onto the table. "Thank you for seeing me. Goodbye, Rachel." As he walked away, Rachel felt the weight of old hopes fall from her shoulders. She drew in a shaky breath, steadying herself. Outside, the sky had cleared, sunlight breaking through moving clouds. Driving home, Rachel passed familiar landmarks, Ethan's favorite burger joint, the park where Lucy learned to ride her tricycle. Each one grounded her in the life she'd built. When she arrived, Sharon awaited her by the front door. The older woman's expression was softer than Rachel had seen in months. "You saw him," Sharon said quietly. "How?" "Thank you, Mom," Rachel interrupted, surprising herself. "I told him my place is here, with Ethan and Lucy." Sharon's lips quivered. "I'm proud of you." She reached out, her hand warm on Rachel's arm. Inside, Ethan stood by the sofa, arms open. Rachel released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She sank into his embrace. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's finally over." Ethan pressed a kiss to her temple. "You did the right thing." That night, Rachel tucked Lucy into bed and kissed her forehead. "Mommy's right here," she murmured, watching her drift to sleep. In the living room, the photograph lay tucked into a book on the shelf, an artifact of a chapter closed. Sharon sat beside Ethan, the discarded chore chart nowhere in sight. She caught Rachel's gaze and offered a tentative smile. As dawn approached, casting its first golden rays through the curtains, Rachel realized that healing her past had strengthened her present. No shadows remained to dim the warmth of her home. And with Ethan's hand in hers, she welcomed the new day, certain, at last, that this was where she truly belonged. The morning sun poured through the gauzy curtains of the Carter home, giving no hint of the tragedy that would soon unfold. After days of relative calm, Sharon's hospitalization behind them, and the family rallying to restore normalcy, everything felt almost too peaceful. Rachel was preparing eggs for Lucy at the kitchen counter, while Ethan reviewed his work emails at the island. Sharon, wearing sweats and leaning on a cane, was carefully arranging flower stems in a vase, determined to start fresh now that she was home. At precisely 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Guests from Sharon's Michigan social circle, teachers, neighbors, longtime friends, had arrived unexpectedly for the afternoon tea Sharon had spontaneously announced. They filled the living room with polite chatter and warm smiles. crediting Sharon's apparent recovery for the impromptu gathering. Emily's departure seemed a distant memory as laughter and clinking teacups eased through the rooms. Rachel brought out trays of scones and finger sandwiches, the aroma of freshly baked pastries mixing with the floral perfume lingering in the air. Just as Ethan was pouring a round of chamomile tea, the front gate clicked. A hush fell over the guests when Victor Nolan stepped onto the porch. He stood in a charcoal overcoat, his posture slightly stiff with nervous energy. His dark hair, now flecked with silver, caught the light as he paused to study the manicured lawn. Rachel's heart seized. Though she told herself he was firmly in the past, here he was, disturbing the fragile balance of their home. Sharon turned toward the foyer, confusion and a flicker of anger crossing her face. "Victor," she said, setting down her teacup. "This is hardly proper." Victor took a tentative step inside. "I'm sorry for arriving unannounced," he said, voice quiet but firm. "I came to see Rachel." His gaze locked on Rachel, who stood rooted beside Ethan, the teacup trembling in her hand. Ethan rose, standing protectively before Rachel. "You shouldn't be here," he said evenly. "This is a family event." Victor's jaw clenched. "I don't care about tea and small talk. I need to speak to her." Sharon's lips tightened. "This is my home. You have no right." She raised her cane in a gesture that hinted at both command and self-defense, her voice cold. Victor ignored her, striding forward as guests fell silent. Rachel set down her tray, uncertainty and fear warring in her eyes. Ethan's hand found Rachel's shoulder. "Rachel," he said quietly, "it's okay." Victor faced Rachel squarely. "You told me to get closure. I gave you that. But Emily told lies about me to your mom. Lies that drove me to." He broke off as Sharon, anger flaring, shoved him back, her frustration ignited by years of pent-up resentment. Victor stumbled and regained his footing, but in that instant Sharon lost her balance on the polished parquet. The cane slipped under her foot, and she pitched backward onto the edge of the wrought iron bench, the metal arm cutting a sharp line into her hip. She cried out, a single, broken sound that froze every guest. Rachel screamed and dropped to Sharon's side as Ethan lunged forward, his chair clattering behind him. Victor stood frozen, horror washing over his face. Sharon lay on her side, hand pressed to her hip, eyes wide with shock and pain. Guests murmured, some rushing to help, others standing back in stunned silence. Rachel cradled Sharon's shoulders, pressing a cushion under her head. Ethan dialed 911 with trembling fingers, eyes never leaving his mother. By the time the paramedics arrived, the living room had become a scene of urgent care. In the ambulance, Sharon moaned softly, wrapped in a blanket, flanked by Ethan and Rachel. Victor followed at a distance, hand over his mouth, tears in his eyes. He pressed forward only when the medics allowed a brief moment, then stood helplessly as they loaded Sharon inside. Rachel sat in the emergency waiting area for what felt like an eternity, her knuckles white against her lap. Emily's pink spiral notebook and chore chart lay abandoned on a side table, their triviality now grotesque reminders of a life they'd once fussed over. Sharon's accident had undone all their petty feuds overnight. At the hospital, the diagnosis was grim: a fractured hip, a mild concussion, several days' stay in trauma care, and weeks of rehabilitation. Sharon was stable but in severe pain. Rachel hovered beside her bed, brushing Sharon's hair back and whispering comfort. Sharon's eyes, glassy with pain medication.
Matriarch.
"I'm sorry," she whispered. "I pushed you too far." Rachel squeezed her hand, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Mom, you scared me." Ethan's voice was firm as he addressed the on-duty police detective who had arrived to take statements. "Victor didn't intend for this to happen," Ethan said. "But he needs to be held accountable." The detective nodded. "We'll file a report for reckless endangerment. We'll need statements from everyone present." Victor, pale and distraught, approached the bedside. "Mom, I'm so sorry,"
he said.
"I never meant to hurt you." His voice cracked. Sharon closed her eyes, pain and forgiveness warring on her face. I don't know what I feel, she murmured. Within days, the district attorney's office had lodged charges: reckless endangerment. Victor's criminal attorney negotiated a plea that reflected the accidental nature of the injury and his lack of prior record. In the preliminary hearing, Rachel provided her statement. Victor had confronted Sharon, she had shoved him, and the fall followed. Witnesses corroborated that Victor had not intended physical harm, but had lost control of his temper. The judge reduced the charge to a misdemeanor, sentencing Victor to 200 hours of community service, mandatory anger management counseling, and restitution covering Sharon's medical copays. No jail time, but a year of probation. On the day of sentencing, Rachel and Ethan sat in the back row of the courtroom. Sharon wore a protective boot on her hip, but made the effort to attend, leaning on her cane. Rachel watched Victor rise as the judge pronounced the sentence. The former editor's husband accepted the terms with bowed head, his shoulders heavy with remorse. Outside the courthouse, Victor approached Rachel, handing her an envelope. Inside was a check to cover Sharon's medical copays and therapy. He met Rachel's eyes. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Rachel nodded once, voice soft. "I know." Back home, Sharon's rehabilitation progressed slowly but steadily. Each day, Rachel helped her onto her walker, guiding her to practice small steps. Although the pain remained, so did an unexpected bond. Sharon's gratitude softened her facing, and Rachel's compassion mended wounds beyond the broken bone. One afternoon, after an especially arduous therapy session, Sharon reached for Rachel's hand.
"Thank you, dear," she said.
"I took you for granted." Rachel squeezed her mother-in-law's hand gently.
"We're family," she replied.
Months later, with the last of the probationary terms fulfilled, Victor completed his community service at a youth center. Ethan and Rachel attended the closing ceremony, where Victor delivered a trembling apology to Sharon in front of the kids he'd mentored. Sharon accepted it, an unspoken promise that mistakes, however grave, could be met with grace. On a quiet Sunday evening, Ethan, Rachel, and Sharon gathered in the living room with fresh tea. The once feared chore lists lay buried. Sharon, her hip brace long discarded, perched on the sofa with a contented expression. Rachel sipped her tea, Lucy playing at their feet. The storm of conflict and pain had given way to a calm stronger than before, tested by tragedy and tempered by forgiveness. In the soft lamplight, the Carter home was again a sanctuary, each family member seated not by duty or oversight, but by love freely given and freely received. The missteps and the justice served had forged a bond unbreakable, promising that no shadow from the past could dim the warmth of their shared future. Spring arrived in Chesterfield with a gentle warmth, coaxing the daffodils in the Carter family's garden to burst into bloom. The Victorian home on Maple Avenue, once a battleground of constant corrections and whispered doubts, now stood serene beneath drifting clouds and golden afternoon light. Inside, laughter and the smell of fresh lemon bars filled the air as Rachel Carter, Ethan Carter, and Sharon Hayes prepared for a late-morning family brunch. No guests, no surprise visits, no chore charts, just the three of them, healing together. Sharon, her hip fully healed and her cane stored away, was busy in the kitchen, whisking batter for banana pancakes with unexpected lightness. Ethan stacked plates on the counter, smiling as Lucy scampered around in her flowered dress, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Rachel arranged flowers on the table and set out glasses of freshly squeezed orange juice. The atmosphere felt unhurried, grounded in the simple joy of being together. As the pancakes sizzled on the griddle, Sharon paused, turning to face Rachel at the counter. "You know, I never thought I'd say this," she began, voice soft, "but I'm glad I ended up here. You and Ethan, you've shown me what it means to fight for family, not control it." Rachel paused and met her mother-in-law's warm brown eyes. For months, every glance from Sharon had felt like judgment. Now that same gaze shone with acceptance. Rachel smiled gently. "I'm glad too," she replied. "I know we both had to learn that love isn't measured in menus or chores. It's in forgiveness and trust." Ethan slid the last pancake onto a plate and offered it to Sharon. "Mom," he said, "why don't you sit down for once? Let me carry this over." Taking his son's arm, Sharon allowed herself to be guided to the table. Lucy clapped her hands and ran to pull out a chair for Grandma. Rachel poured tea into delicate china cups, each one a reminder of simpler times before tension had taken root. They sat together, forming a circle of new beginnings. Rachel lifted her fork and took a slow bite of pancake, savoring the warmth and sweetness. Ethan reached for his glass of orange juice and raised it in a spontaneous toast. "To family," he said, voice steady and clear. "To second chances." Rachel and Sharon echoed the toast, their cups clinking softly. After breakfast, Sharon disappeared briefly into the living room and returned with a small box wrapped in pale blue paper. She placed it in front of Rachel. "I meant to give this to you months ago," Sharon said, lowering her gaze with a shy smile. "It's the recipe box I used when I first got married. I thought maybe you'd like it." Rachel opened the box to find a handwritten collection of Sharon's most treasured recipes: lemon meringue pie, rosemary garlic roast chicken, and her famous Sunday beef stew. Each card bore Sharon's precise cursive and occasional margin notes: "Use fresh thyme," or "Serve with crusty bread." It was a gift of trust and tradition. Rachel's eyes brimmed with tears as she hugged Sharon. "Thank you," she whispered. "It means more than you know." With spring in full swing, the Carters decided to celebrate renewal by planting a rose bush together in the side yard. Armed with gardening gloves and a new sapling, Rachel, Ethan, and Sharon knelt side by side, digging into the dark, fragrant soil. Lucy toddled around with a small watering can, spraying droplets onto the ground in delighted spurts. As they gently placed the rosebush in its new home and covered the roots with earth, Sharon pressed her hand over Ethan's. "Watch it grow," she said softly, "just like our family." Over the next weeks, the restored harmony in the Carter home radiated outward. At Rachel's magazine office, colleagues noticed her newfound glow and inquired about her improved mood. At Ethan's tech startup, coworkers remarked on his lighter step and broader smile. Sharon settled into a volunteer role at the local library, trading constant household supervision for organizing community book drives and story hours for neighborhood children. She discovered enjoyment in small acts of service, rather than control. Emily Parker's chapter had closed, and though memories of her manipulation lingered, they served as a reminder of how far the family had come. One sunny Saturday afternoon, the Carters and Sharon hosted a small neighborhood barbecue in the backyard. The aroma of grilled vegetables and burgers drifted through the air as neighbors from Maple Avenue mingled on the lawn. Children played tag around the rosebush, and the hum of conversation blended with the chirping of birds. At one point, a neighbor stopped Sharon to compliment the beautiful family gathering. Sharon beamed, her eyes reflecting genuine warmth.
"Thank you," she said.
"I'm learning that life is too short for anything but love and laughter." That evening, as the last embers of the fire pit glowed, Rachel plotted out future traditions with Sharon and Ethan. They spoke of planting a vegetable garden, hosting annual spring brunches, and taking a family trip to the lake. Each plan came with laughter and a sense of excitement for what lay ahead. Lucy, perched on Sharon's lap, yawned and leaned her head against her grandmother's shoulder, a picture of generational unity. In the quiet aftermath of the barbecue, Rachel walked the perimeter of their yard, now redesigned to welcome family and friends rather than serve as a pristine showcase. The rosebush they had planted in the spring morning now budded with pale pink blossoms. The air held the promise of new growth, new memories yet to be formed. Rachel paused and gently touched a petal, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. From harsh critiques and whispered manipulations to apologies, forgiveness, and genuine connection, the gentle breeze carried a sense of possibility. Rachel knew challenges would arise. No family was without its ups and downs, but the foundation they had rebuilt in love, trust, and mutual respect would guide them through any shadows. With Ethan's hand in hers and Sharon's supportive presence by their side, Rachel stepped back into the home, closing the door on old conflicts. Lucy's bright laughter echoed from the living room, and for the first time in months, every corner of the Carter house radiated warmth. In that peaceful moment, Rachel realized that true happiness was not perfection, but the resilience to forgive, the courage to speak one's truth, and the freedom to cultivate a family garden where every heart could blossom. And that brings us to the end of today's story on TrueStory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.